Hello, church family. Welcome to today's Sunday school lesson. We are in session 3 entitled A Deceiver, and our key idea this week is God accomplishes his purposes through flawed families and people. We're going to be in Genesis chapter 27, verses 18 through 30. We're going to start off by asking the question, how should knowing that God is able to accomplish his purposes through flawed people impact us? Well, first off, it's helpful to us to know that because I'm flawed and yet God can still use me. David was flawed, and God still used him to be one of the most, if not the most, influential people in the Old Testament. There are flawed people all throughout Scripture. Paul was flawed. Peter was flawed. James, the brother of Jesus, I'm sure, got asked, why can you not be more like your brother Jesus? Because he was flawed as well. So there's a story about the first mate of a ship who despised his captain. In the ship's log, he wrote, "The captain was sober today when he was on the bridge. The truth of the matter was the captain was always sober when he was on the bridge." The mate's written words may have been truthful. Nonetheless, what he communicated was misleading and deceitful. Deceitfulness is an egregious sin and will always come with consequences. Nevertheless, God is able to accomplish his purposes through flawed and even deceitful people. So, what we'll see today is how God used even the deceitful act of Jacob deceiving his father Isaac, how even through that God blesses the nation of Israel. He's not condoning the deceit of his father, of Jacob's father Isaac, but he brings good out of bad situations. So the account of Isaac is often overshadowed by the account of Abraham, his father, and Jacob, his son, but it should not be overlooked. First, it demonstrates God's faithfulness to fulfill the covenant promises he had made to Abraham and to his offspring through Isaac. Second, even though Isaac often at times displayed a weakness in character, he wasn't always the strongest husband or strongest father, he sought to be a godly man. Isaac was unusual because Rebekah was his only wife, and he loved her dearly. Most men of his station, being a wealthy man of many flock and many servants, had many women as well. Instead, Isaac had one wife, and it was Rebekah, and he loved her dearly. So they were married for 20 years before Rebekah finally was able to conceive and gave birth to twin sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau was born first. He was the first twin out of the womb, and Jacob came after him. And Esau was favored by his father, Isaac, whereas Jacob was favored by his mother. And our text today, and also just general consensus is that, yes, these parents made a mistake by showing favoritism and favor to their sons instead of treating them as equals, especially seeing as they were twins. So Esau was an outdoorsman, whereas Jacob was a homebody. Esau was kind of carefree and doing all of his kind of careless with his actions and things. And Jacob, on the other hand, was much more shrewd and astute. It actually happens that I think whenever they get home from a hunt, or Esau is coming home from a hunting trip, he's so hungry that he's begging his brother for some food, and Jacob just kind of says, "Well, if you're so hungry, sell me your birthright, sell me your inheritance for this bowl of soup or this food I'm going to give you." And Esau was so hungry that he did that. He said, "All right, whatever, you can have my inheritance for the bowl of soup." Well, even though he had sold his birthright, and legitimately so, this is something that was honored that we know was honored by Esau. He was also still entitled to his dying father's blessing, being the firstborn son to Isaac. Well, Rebekah, because she favored Jacob, wanted Jacob to get that blessing instead of Esau, and so she enables Jacob's seat so that he can also receive the blessing from Isaac. So we're going to start there. When Jacob goes into the tent with his ailing and sick and elderly father and steal his brother's blessing by deceiving his father. Now, I want you to know that through all of this, we're reading this account. Let's just read it as fact. We are neither condoning nor condemning Jacob for this right now. We will see, however, in our just through the questions we're going to ask, that it is always, always, always against God's will and against God's law to deceive each other, and especially to get ahead of someone else. Even though Jacob did deceive his father, however, God didn't bless Jacob because of this. He continued to bless and honor his covenant with Abraham and Isaac, his father and his grandfather and his father. This is not on Jacob's doing. This is on God's doing alone. This is not God condoning what Jacob did. It is only him honoring the covenant that he had made with Abraham. So, with that in mind, let's begin reading in verse 18. When he came to his father, he said, "My father," and he answered, "Here I am. Where are you, my son?" Jacob replied to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game." Wild game. Isaac had told Esau to go hunting, and bring back some wild game for him, so that you may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" He replied, "Because the Lord your God made it happen for me." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come closer so I can touch you, my son. Are you really my son Esau or not?" So Jacob came closer to his father Isaac. When he touched him, he said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau, so he blessed him. Again he asked, "Are you really my son Esau?" And he replied, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it closer to me and let me eat some of my son's game so that I can bless you." Jacob brought it closer to him, and he ate. He brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Please come closer and kiss me, my son." So he came closer and kissed him. When Isaac smelled his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give to you from the dew of the sky and from the richness of the land an abundance of grain and new wine. May the people serve you and nations bow and worship to you. Be master over your relatives. May your mother's sons bow and worship to you. Those who curse you will be cursed, and those who bless you will be blessed." As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had left the presence of his father Isaac, his brother Esau arrived from hunting. So the first section here, verses 18 through 20, this is the trap set. And we need to read this knowing that we must avoid justifying our wrong actions. Just because the means, or just because the ends are good for us, that doesn't necessarily or ever justify the means of getting there. So if we do something wrong to get something good, the something good does not justify the something wrong. That makes sense. So let's read these 3 verses again together. When Jacob came to his father Isaac, he said, "My father." And Isaac answered, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob replied to his father, "I am Esau." Here's the first deceit. "Your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may bless me." So that wording on bless me, the phrase bless me, it implies an abundance of benefits, either for an individual or to bless others. Jacob was trying to steal his older brother's blessing. He was trying to steal what Isaac said in the last few verses of this passage, from verse 28 on. And then verse 20. "But Isaac said to his son, 'How did you find it ever so quickly, my son?' Jacob replied, 'Because the Lord your God made it happen for me.'" So what actually happened here is that Jacob's mom, Rebecca, actually had made some stew from from the flocks that they owned, the goat and the sheep that they owned, and gave that to Jacob to give to his father. So that's how come he was able to turn around so quickly from Isaac asking Esau to go hunt, and then Jacob entering the tent and saying, "It just happened really quick, Dad." And he deceived his father several times here. Number one, he claimed to be someone he's not. Number two, he didn't go and hunt anything. His mom made the stew for him. And then when he was asked about it, he lied and said that the Lord made it happen for him. And so we see here three deceits already, three deceptive activities or events already in these three verses. So, how do we try to fool others to get a blessing today? Well, we might fib the truth a little bit, maybe try to show that we're doing more work than we actually are, maybe try to make ourselves appear as if we're working harder than we really are so that we can get more accolade or more benefit from that. And then here, as Jacob did, how do we try to include God in our schemes? Well, we might get ahead and be like, man, the Lord has blessed me. The Lord has given me lots of things, when in reality, we don't deserve the things that we stole, if you want to call it stealing, whenever you get something you don't deserve, and then you you incorrectly attribute that blessing, that quote unquote blessing, which it's not. It's something that it's ill-gotten gains, as to put a legal term to it, and we include God in that and say God has blessed us, God has given this to us. Well, that's what Jacob did. He included God in his scheme there in verse 20. And so then in our second section, this is verses 21 through 27, we have to make sure that we're diligent in examining the claims before us. This includes with news that is presented today, and whether or not it is real claims or if it is fake news. If you've been on Facebook at all in the last, I would say, 3 months since 2024 started, you have probably absolutely have seen an AI generated ad, either an image or text or a video, even at this point, that is generated completely by a computer. Maybe with a little help on the back end with prompting and training and things like that. But the ad is pretending to be someone that they're not. I saw one the other day that was Joe Biden. He was advertising a $6,400 basically stimulus package thing, like what we got during COVID. But the thing was that it was not Joe Biden. It was not the president of the United States doing this. There's so many voice clips of him that they were able to train a computer model to sound like Joe Biden just based off of typed text. The creators of this scam, or whatever it may be, they typed in the words and then the computer read them in the voice of Joe Biden. And that's what we're at right now with this technology. But now they can even generate video and images that look so close to real life. So we have to make sure that we scrutinize everything, especially in today's world, so that we are not misled. And Isaac was supposed to scrutinize and make sure, and he does try to make sure, that he was talking to his son. This is probably the world's first account of identity theft in history, with Esau gone and Jacob pretending to be his brother. So let's read together verses 21 through 27. Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come closer so I can touch you, my son. Are you really my son Esau or not?" So Jacob came closer to his father Isaac. When he touched him, he said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." He did not recognize him because his hands were hairy like those of his brother Esau, so he blessed him. Again he said, "Are you really my son Esau?" And he replied, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it closer to me, the food. Bring it closer to me and let me eat some of my son's game so that I can bless you." Jacob brought it closer to him and he ate. He brought him some wine and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Please come closer and kiss me, my son." So he came closer and kissed him. When Isaac smelled his clothes, he blessed him and said, "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed." So the opening line here of Isaac's blessing on Jacob, it corresponds to Jacob's deception. Jacob actually wore Esau's clothing so that he would smell like his brother. This was what finally convinced Isaac that he was, in fact, dealing with Esau. And so this again is the probably the first case of identity theft where somebody successfully pretended to be someone else. So, when is it healthy to remain skeptical about a person's claims? I would say anytime somebody is trying to get something from you, it is good to be skeptical. On a more real note, especially when it comes to church life, I would say when they are expecting you to do everything for them, um, with no effort on their part, and they have no desire to talk about their faith or talk about their walk with Jesus or anything like this, I would say that it would be healthy to be skeptical of people's claims. I would also say anytime they're trying to get you to outside of church in the real world, anytime someone is trying to get information about you that is not necessary to your dealings with them. Like, not everything I buy needs to know my address and my phone number and my email address and things like that. But all of that information is good for them to have for advertisement purposes. If I give brochures on my thank you card application, if I give them my address, well, I'm going to get a bunch of Brookshires ads, and so they're going to send me advertisements. If I give them my phone number, I might get text messages or phone calls. They might sell that information and make money off of that in the advertisement department. When you go on websites, your browser has a cookie. Like, we call it a cookie, but it's really just a token that identifies your computer and your IP address with that website, for that website, so that when you come back to it, it has your ID hooked to it in a way that they can see what other advertisements you've seen, and they can give you more of those advertisements, which is good for them as the website and the company because they're getting paid for every time somebody clicks on an ad. But it's not good for us because it's an invasion of our privacy, and it might seem minor, and it is minor, but still, we don't want big corporations knowing who we are, what we like, what our interests are, because they can use that for more just nefarious advertising schemes. So I would say anytime somebody needs more information about us, we should be skeptical about what they're wanting. That's a huge rant about the internet and about the world today and advertisement. And it has nothing to do with our text here, but we should remain skeptical of things trying to pretend to be people they're not. People fall into phone scams all the time because the scammer will call, usually an elderly person, a grandparent, and they will have enough information on this person to know their grandkids' names, and they'll have a staticky enough line, artificially staticky enough line to make it sound like it's breaking up or they're in distress of some kind, and they're asking for money, pretending to be someone else, and trying to get money from an elderly grandparent when in fact it is not the grandchild. So it is healthy to remain skeptical about a person's claims whenever there might be a chance that they are deceiving you, and if you can't see them face to face. In our third section and final section is the blessing granted. So this is Jacob pulling off the heist, so to speak. Verses 28 through 30. May God give to you from the dew of the sky and from the richness of the land an abundance of grain and new wine. May people serve you. Excuse me. And nations bow and worship to you. Be master over your relatives. May your mother's sons bow and worship to you. Those who curse you will be cursed, and those who bless you will be blessed. As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had left the presence of his father Isaac, his brother Esau arrived from his hunting. So when have you seen, and I'll answer this question for myself, when have you seen God bring good out of a dysfunctional or chaotic situation? Well, as you know, as many of you know, my nephew has been living with my mother for quite a long time, and it's been a very dysfunctional situation. Mom had full custody of my nephew, and recently things have just kind of hit ahead there at home, and There was violence in the home because my nephew was acting out violently, and he's a young kid, so it's no one's really in danger, but some things are concerning. So my mom has surrendered custody back over to my sister, who has not had custody of James for a number of years at this point. He lived with my father for a while and lived with my mother for a bit. Anyway, my sister now has custody again of her son and is uh, honestly doing great. And they've actually been working this weekend trying to get her house or an apartment set up and getting everything in place for them to have a good home life. And my sister's been really good about getting my nephew to all of his appointments and things on time. And it's been really good to see how God has worked. My sister's been back in church, and she hasn't been in church in years and years. I think the last time she had been in church before the past couple of Sundays was she came and visited EBC. This is not my sister Carly. This is my oldest younger sister. And she is really doing well, and God is blessing her for stepping up and fulfilling the role of mother that she was given, and she was given this role back in 2016. My nephew was born in 2016, and this is the first time that she's really stepped into that, and I believe God is blessing her for doing the things she ought to be doing. And so this is definitely good out of a chaotic and dysfunctional, both of those adjectives apply, situation. So I hope this is an encouragement to you. I hope this lesson does not encourage you to be deceitful in order to receive blessings. I hope you see the consequences of the actions here. After this happened, Jacob was on the run for a lot of his life. He did not reconcile, with his brother for a number of years after all of this happened. He did not live in the promised land, in the land of Canaan, for a number of years after this happened. And Jacob would be on the run from his brother Esau for most of that time because Esau was angry and because his brother had deceived him. And we need to acknowledge the sinfulness in that and not try to sweep it under the rug that it was God's will, because it wasn't God's will. Sin is never in the will of God, but God can still bring good out of a bad, especially a sinful. Thank you so much for being with me today. I look forward to worshiping with you very soon. Bye-bye.